Imagine money standing before you as a person. Imagine it with ears to hear, feet to follow, hands to give. What would you say to it? Would you complain? Would you beg? Or would you welcome it as family? Speak rightly, and money will never forsake you again. In this teaching, I will show you how to speak to money as if it were a person, why it listens, and why it must obey the voice of your imagination. You will learn why money avoids those who chase it, why it hides from those who fear it, and why it clings to the one who honors it as alive. By the end, you will know how to make money follow you as faithfully as a child follows its mother. I know your struggle. You have worked hard, yet money slips away. You have prayed for more, but still the bills pile high. You have treated money as though it were cold and lifeless, a thing to be calculated and counted, and so it has fled from you. But I will show you a different way, the way of imagination. Money is spirit, clothed in form, and spirit responds only to voice and feeling. When you talk to it as alive, you are not pretending, you are commanding. And once you understand this, the endless chase will end, and money will begin to chase you. In this message, I will reveal three things. First, why you must treat money as a living person, not as a dead object. Second, how to speak to it so that it cannot resist you. And third, the reason money will follow you everywhere once you have claimed it as your companion. Along the way, I will open the scriptures to show you that this secret is hidden in plain sight, and I will give you testimonies of those who dared to try it and found wealth flooding to them. By the end, you will know that the voice of your imagination is the true magnet of money, and you will never again fear its absence. You will see why lack was always an illusion, and why abundance was waiting all along for the sound of your command. Here's something most people completely miss, and it is the very reason they chase money for a lifetime, yet never feel its companionship. They believe money is dead. They think of it as numbers on a screen, ink on paper, cold coins in a jar. They treat it as if it were lifeless, as if it had no ear to hear, no heart to respond, no spirit to obey. And so, when they beg for it, it does not answer. When they fear it, it flees. When they cling to it with trembling hands, it slips away, for who among us could ever cling to a corpse and expect warmth in return? Yet I tell you, money is not dead matter. Money is spirit made visible, imagination clothed in form. And the moment you shift your concept of it, the moment you stop seeing it as a lifeless object and begin to see it as a living presence, everything changes. Think for a moment how you have been taught to think about money since childhood. It doesn't grow on trees. Save every penny or you'll have nothing. The rich are greedy. There's never enough. These sayings are repeated until they are carved into the subconscious. And what picture do they form? They form the image of money as something scarce, something hostile, something cold and uncaring. And because imagination is the only reality, that image becomes your experience. You treat money as though it were unwilling, and so it flees. You treat it as though it were cruel, and so it bites. You treat it as though it were indifferent, and so it ignores you. The outer world is only the shadow of the inner concept, and if your concept of money is lifeless, then lifeless will be your bank account. I once knew a man who worked harder than any I had ever seen. He labored from dawn until dusk, saving every coin, tracking every expense, calculating every figure. Yet no matter how much he earned, the money seemed to vanish as quickly as it came. He lived in fear of bills, spoke of money as slipping through my fingers, and every time I saw him he would mutter, "I can never hold on to it." Do you see the error? He had turned money into a thief, an enemy, a cruel master. He had personified it without realizing it, and his words were the decree of his imagination. And because assumption, though false, if persisted in, hardens into fact, his world never changed until he changed his concept of money itself. Here is what I want you to see. Money is not object. It is relationship. If you treat it as dead, you will never feel its loyalty. But if you treat it as alive, you will discover that it longs to serve you. This is why I call this section Money as a Living Presence. For once you dare to speak to it as if it hears, Once you dare to imagine it standing before you as a companion, you begin to unlock the law. Scripture does this again and again. Wisdom is spoken of as a woman crying in the streets. Sin is crouching at the door as though alive. Love and death and wealth are personified, because everything in creation is imagination clothed in form. When you learn to speak to money as a person, you are not pretending you are speaking the language of spirit. So pause now and ask yourself, how have you been speaking about money? What words have you carved into your inner mirror? Do you call it scarce, cruel, fleeting? Or do you call it faithful, abundant, willing? That answer reveals why money has treated you as it has. For the way you speak to it is the way it answers you. And tonight, if you dare, you will begin to change the conversation. What I am about to share might seem counterintuitive at first, but once it takes root in you, it will transform the way you look at every coin, every bill, every balance in your account. You must see money as spirit, for everything you behold in this world is spirit clothed in form. Nothing is truly dead, nothing is truly lifeless, nothing is mere matter. The entire universe is imagination pushed out, and imagination is not a cold principle, but the living God himself operating in you as your own awareness. When you look at money and see only paper and metal, you are deceived by appearances. When you look at money and think only of numbers moving from one column to another, you have missed the mystery. Money is simply the condensation of consciousness, the visible garment of invisible spirit. To treat it as lifeless is to cut yourself off from its true source. To treat it as alive is to recognize that it flows from the same fountain of imagination that gave you breath and gave the stars their light. Think of it this way: a child who longs for attention, who desires to be seen and spoken to, will grow restless if ignored, will grow sullen if scorned. But the same child, when spoken to kindly, when honored with affection, will cling to you, will laugh with you, will follow you everywhere. So it is with money. When you fear it, when you scorn it, when you chase it as though it were unwilling, it grows restless and leaves. But when you speak to it as friend, when you honor it as a faithful companion, when you welcome it without shame, it draws near and refuses to depart. The same God who has personified love and wisdom in Scripture has clothed abundance in the form of money, waiting for you to speak to it as though it hears. I remember a student who told me she had always felt uneasy around money. She would say, "It frightens me. I don't know how to keep it. It disappears from me." And her life echoed those words every time she received more. Expenses rose to match. Unexpected troubles swallowed it up. I asked her to try an experiment. Each time she opened her purse, she was to say aloud, "You are faithful to me, you multiply with me, you belong to me." At first it felt strange, almost laughable, as though she was speaking into the air. But within weeks she wrote me that not only had unexpected gifts arrived, but her expenses had shrunk, doors had opened, and she felt a new confidence every time she touched her purse. What had changed? Not the economy, not her salary, not the figures on her statement, only her concept of money itself. She no longer saw it as lifeless and hostile. She saw it as spirit, and spirit responded. So let me ask you, what image do you hold when you think of money? Do you see it as cold digits, a stranger to be chased, a master to be feared? Or can you dare to see it as a living friend, loyal and eager, spirit clothed in form? For everything you call wealth is only imagination crystallized, and imagination is God in action. See money as spirit, and you will speak to it as alive. Speak to it as alive, and it will answer. And once it begins to answer, you will know that you were never dealing with dead matter at all. You were communing with the living God in disguise. This next part changed everything for me, and it will change everything for you once you dare to practice it. It is the principle of personification, the sacred art of giving a face, a voice, and a presence to that which the world calls abstract. Why do the scriptures speak of wisdom crying out in the streets, or sin crouching at the door, or death riding upon a pale horse? Why does the prophet address the heavens and the earth as if they were listening, alive, ready to obey. Because imagination knows the truth that reason forgets. Everything is alive. Everything responds. Everything is only a state of consciousness clothed in symbol. When you treat a quality as dead, you sever your connection to it. But when you personify it, you make it immediate, intimate, relational. And what is closer to your heart each day than money? You touch it, you think of it, you need it for bread and shelter. And yet most treat it as lifeless, cold, indifferent. No wonder it flees from them, for they have starved it of recognition. Let me show you how this works. A woman once told me she was always anxious when she opened her purse. She feared what she would find, or rather, what she would not find. She counted and recounted her bills, sighing over the emptiness, and the purse became a mirror reflecting her poverty. I asked her to do something simple, something she thought absurd at first. Each time she opened her purse, I told her, speak to it as though it were a loyal friend. Say, you are always full, you are faithful to me, you multiply in my hands. She laughed at the idea but agreed to try. Within a short time she noticed not only that unexpected money began to come, but that her purse itself always seemed to have more than she remembered placing in it. Why? Because she had stopped treating it as a hollow bag and began treating it as a faithful companion. She personified it, and the personification awakened its obedience. This is why I say, treat money as a servant, not as a master. Speak to it with authority, but also with respect. It longs to serve you, but only when you give it identity. Without identity, it is a shadow. With identity, it becomes responsive. Imagine money standing before you as a trusted friend. What would you say? Would you scold it, complain that it always leaves you, accuse it of never being enough? Or would you say, I am glad you are here. I trust you. I honor you. You and I walk together. The moment you change your speech, you change your relationship. And since the outer world is nothing more than the reflection of inner relationship, money in the outer must conform to the new role you have assigned it. So do not call this foolish or childish. It is the ancient practice hidden in Scripture, the mystery of addressing powers as though they were persons, for in imagination they are persons. Personification is the bridge between the invisible and the visible, between the thought and the thing. Speak to money as alive, and you will discover that it is. And once you have made it your servant through personification, it will follow you everywhere, eager to obey, unwilling to depart. For money, like every form in this world, is only imagination pushed out. And imagination responds to the voice that calls it by name. Now that you have seen money as presence and servant, let me show you the hidden key that stirs it into action, the inner conversation. For what you whisper within yourself day and night is far more powerful than what you shout to the world. You may never speak aloud of money. You may never voice your fears to a friend or your desires to a stranger. But within, in the secrecy of thought, you are always speaking. And those inner words are prayers. They are decrees. They are laws sent forth that must return with their harvest. When you look at money as a person, you begin to realize that all of your inner chatter is conversation with it. If you sigh inwardly, money always leaves me. You have spoken to it as though it were a thief. If you mutter, I never have enough, you have addressed it as though it were stingy and unfaithful. And because imagination is the only reality, money will take on the very character you gave it in that conversation and play it out in your world. But here lies the wonder: you can change the conversation. You can rewrite the dialogue. You can begin this very night to speak to money as though it were the most loyal companion you ever knew. Do not plead with it, for pleading assumes absence. Do not argue with it, for arguing assumes resistance. Instead, speak as though you already share companionship. Say within yourself, you belong with me. You are faithful to me. You love to stay with me. Say it not with strained effort, but with the quiet tone of friendship. Just as you would greet a loved one returning home, greet money and imagination with joy and ease. The subconscious does not distinguish between inner and outer speech. It accepts what you feel to be real. And once accepted, it must express itself in the outer world. I recall one student who had lived many years in resentment toward money. He felt betrayed by it, abandoned, mocked by its scarcity. Every day, though he said nothing aloud, he carried on an inward quarrel. Where are you? Why do you always leave me? Why don't you ever stay? And his life mirrored the quarrel. Money came in small spurts, then vanished. I asked him to change the inner dialogue, to imagine money answering him with loyalty. He began to hear within himself the words, I am here. I never leave you. I grow with you. At first it felt absurd, like talking into the air, but he persisted. Weeks later he wrote to me astonished. Unexpected payments arrived, forgotten debts were repaid, and for the first time in years he felt secure. His outer world had caught up to his new inner conversation. This is the law. Your inner talking awakens what you affirm. You cannot curse money in secret and bless it in public. You cannot treat it as enemy in thought and expect it as friend in fact. You must align the inner with the outer, and the only way to do so is to change the conversation at its root. Tonight, as you lie down to sleep, do not let your last words be complaints about lack. Instead, let them be the gentle assurance, money, you are with me. You multiply with me. You delight to follow me. Speak as though it listens, because it does. And soon, the person you once chased will be the one chasing you. Here's something most people never realize, and it is why they pray for money year after year, yet see nothing change. The tone of begging drives money away. Begging does not draw, it repels. Begging says, I don't have it. I'm far from it. I need someone outside of me to give it. And when you pray or affirm with that feeling, you are not commanding wealth, you are confessing lack. The subconscious hears only the state you occupy. If you kneel inwardly with a sense of poverty, your words may say, come, but your feeling says, stay away. And feeling is the only medium by which the subconscious is moved. To beg is to assume separation, and what you assume, you create. Think of the difference between a servant who begs and a master who commands. The beggar pleads, wrings his hands, waits for approval. The master speaks once, calmly, firmly, knowing his word will be carried out. Which of the two do you imagine money obeys? Which voice would you obey? The voice of panic or the voice of certainty? Do not mistake me, I am not saying you must shout or strain. Authority does not shout, it does not beg. Authority speaks with quiet confidence. When you say to money, you are mine, you belong with me, you will never leave me, you are not pleading, you are commanding, and money must obey the command impressed upon imagination. I once counseled a man who had been affirming for years, yet nothing seemed to change. He said to me, Neville, every morning I cry out, please God, send me money, please help me pay my bills. Why does nothing happen? I told him, because every please is a declaration that you do not yet have. Stop begging and start claiming. At first he resisted, for begging had become his habit. But he agreed to test me. That night, instead of pleading, he stood before his mirror, looked into his own eyes, and said with calm assurance, money, you are mine. You are faithful to me. You multiply with me. He felt, if only for a moment, that it was true. Within days, unexpected payments arrived, work opened, and the very bills that tormented him were cleared. He returned to me with tears, saying, I never knew how much begging chained me to lack until I dared to speak as master instead of servant. So I say to you, never again beg for money. Do not plead with heaven as though heaven were deaf. Do not whimper at the world as though it had the power to grant or deny. Instead, speak with the tone of ownership. Speak as though money is already yours, because in truth, all things already are. All things are yours, says the scripture. Begging denies it, commanding affirms it. Choose this day which voice you will use. If you beg, money will continue to flee. If you command with love and authority, money will follow you faithfully, for it has heard the voice of its master. And now I must show you the gentlest part of this mystery, the part that turns what could feel like cold command into a living bond, the tone of friendship. For money, like every manifestation of spirit, does not respond only to authority, it also responds to affection. A master who commands without love breeds rebellion. A friend who invites with warmth breeds loyalty. If you speak to money as though it were a slave to be driven, you may see results for a time, but they will be brittle and short-lived. If you speak to money as though it were a dear companion, eager to serve, eager to stay, you will discover a flow that is natural, easy, and constant. Love draws, fear drives away. Honor attracts, contempt repels. Treat money as a living friend and it will behave like one. Think of how you greet someone you cherish. You do not bark orders. You smile, you welcome, you acknowledge their value, you trust them, you make space for them in your life. Imagine now greeting money the same way, not as a cold stranger, not as a capricious master, but as a trusted friend who always arrives when called, who delights to be in your company, who stays because it feels at home. When you pay a bill, do not sigh and say, "There goes my money." Smile inwardly and say, "Thank you for circulating through me, thank you for returning multiplied." When you receive money, do not clutch it in fear, but welcome it as a guest. Speak to it kindly, bless it as it comes and bless it as it goes. In blessing, you establish a bond. In blessing, you keep the channel open. A woman once told me she had always been harsh with money. She scolded it as she counted it, cursed it when it seemed not enough, spoke of it as though it were an unfaithful lover. And her experience mirrored her speech. Money came, unpredictably, stayed briefly, and left with a sting. I asked her to change her tone. Each time she handled money, I told her, treat it as though she were handling a dear friend's hand. Speak softly to it. Say, "You are faithful to me. I honor you. You delight to stay with me." At first it felt absurd, but soon she noticed that money began to flow in more steadily. Her anxiety dropped, and opportunities arrived unasked. She wrote to me saying, "I feel as though money and I are no longer enemies but partners." That is the tone of friendship at work. Do not underestimate this. The law responds to feeling, and the feeling of friendship is one of the strongest attractors in the world. If you can bring to your relationship with money the same warmth you would bring to a beloved child or a faithful dog, you will find it returns with eagerness. This is not play acting. It is aligning your inner speech with the true nature of spirit. All things are alive. All things are states of consciousness. All things respond to love. When you treat money as a dear companion, speaking with quiet authority and genuine affection, it will not only obey, but it will linger, it will multiply, it will surround you. You will cease to be a beggar or a commander, you will become a friend, and in friendship, money will find its home with you. Now let me place into your hands the very words, the sacred phrases, the living decrees you can use to awaken this companionship and seal the bond forever. For though it is not the word alone, but the feeling behind the word that impresses the subconscious, words are vessels, words are carriers, words are sparks that ignite the fire of imagination. The scripture declares, "By thy words thou shalt be justified, and by thy words thou shalt be condemned." Words shape the inner conversation, and the inner conversation shapes the outer world. If you continue to say, "I never have enough," you are condemning yourself to lack. If you dare, instead to say, "I am wealth," you justify abundance into being. The outer world must mirror the inner decree. So what words should you speak to money? Speak to it as to a person. Address it by name. Say, "Money, you belong with me. You are faithful to me. You never leave me. You multiply with me." Say, "I am wealth. I am abundance. I am the circulation of prosperity." Do not say these as a mantra of fear, repeating desperately as though to force a change. Say them as a friend speaks to a friend, calm, certain, with the quiet tone of ownership. When you say, "I am wealth," you are not describing a condition, you are naming yourself with the name of God. When Moses asked, "What is your name?" the answer came, "I am that I am." Every time you say, "I am," You are calling upon the eternal presence within. Add to it the quality you desire, and you clothe God in that quality. I am wealthy is not wishful thinking, it is the creative act itself. I recall a man who used to speak constantly of money as though it were his enemy. He would say, I can't hold on to it. It slips away. It's never enough. I asked him to change his words. Each morning, as he looked into the mirror, he was to say, Money, you are mine. You delight to stay with me. You grow with me. I am wealthy. At first he laughed, saying it felt childish. But within weeks he noticed something strange. Money began to arrive in ways unexpected, through refunds, forgotten accounts, sudden gifts. His expenses eased. He felt lighter, freer. He wrote to me saying the words changed the way I felt, and the way I felt changed the way life treated me. That is the power of the spoken decree. So tonight, I urge you, take these words and make them your own. Speak them silently if you must, aloud if you dare, but always with feeling. I am wealth. Money, you are faithful to me. You never leave me. Let them become as natural as breathing, as constant as your heartbeat. For the subconscious hears, imagination responds, and the outer world obeys. Do not underestimate the simple phrase, for all creation is carried on the current of inner speech. Change the words, and you change the world. And when next you open your wallet, or sign your name to a check, or pass by the mirror, let the words rise again. You belong with me. I am abundance. Speak them until they are no longer words you say, but the truth you live. Then you will know that money is not your master nor your enemy, but your companion, obedient, faithful, and alive. What I am about to tell you now is the very heartbeat of this teaching, for without it all the words we have spoken are but dry shells, empty sounds. It is the feeling that fills them, the breath that animates them, the pulse that turns them from idle speech into living creation. Feeling is the secret. When I say to you, speak to money as though it were a person, I do not mean only that you string together sentences or repeat affirmations like a parrot. I mean that you enter the state, that you step into the mood, that you allow yourself to feel what it would be like if your words were already true. For the subconscious does not hear words, it feels vibrations. It does not respond to the sound of language, it responds to the tone of reality accepted within. Imagine then the difference between one who says, Money, you belong with me, with a heart still tight with fear, still trembling with doubt, still glancing at an empty account, and another who closes his eyes, breathes deeply, and feels the ease, the relief, the joy of a life where money already walks with him, already fills his hands, already multiplies at his touch. The first is reciting, the second is creating, the first is hoping, the second is claiming. It is this inner shift that marks the line between waiting forever and receiving now. I once met a man who had learned every affirmation he could find. He recited them morning and night, wrote them in journals, pasted them on his walls, yet nothing changed. When he spoke, his voice trembled, his body tensed, his eyes searched for proof. He was trying to force the outer world without ever entering the inner state. I told him to stop repeating for a time and instead close his eyes, take a single phrase, I am wealthy, and live inside it. Feel the warmth of security, the calm of abundance, the gratitude of having more than enough. Let it become real for 5 minutes, not as words, but as experience. He did. And within a month, unexpected opportunities unfolded, debts cleared, income doubled. He wrote me saying, it was not the words, Neville, it was the feeling. For the first time I felt it real, and then it came. This is what you must do. When you speak to money, speak as though it were already at your side. Feel its presence. Feel the ease of paying every bill with joy. Feel the freedom of never worrying again. Let your imagination furnish the scene. See the bank statement with surplus. Hear yourself telling a friend how easily it flows. Feel the weight of the notes in your hand. Do not postpone the feeling to some future day, feel it now. Because feeling it now is the only way it can be planted in the subconscious. And once planted, it will grow of its own accord. So tonight, when you look at the word you have written on your mirror, do not stare with cold eyes. Step into the scene. Let your body relax as though the thing were already done. Breathe as the wealthy breathe. Walk as the wealthy walk. Talk as the wealthy talk. Feel as the wealthy feel. For you are not trying to attract money, you are becoming the state to which money naturally flows. Feeling is the secret. And when you marry the spoken word to the felt reality, you have sealed the union from which every miracle is born. Now, let us go deeper. For words and feelings must not remain isolated sparks. They must join together to form an atmosphere, an environment, a climate in which you live and move all day long. This is what I call the atmosphere of companionship. It is not enough to declare in the morning, "Money, you belong with me," and then spend the rest of the day worrying if it will stay. It is not enough to feel for 5 minutes the joy of abundance and then drown the other 23 hours in fear and doubt. No, the secret is to carry with you a constant mood, an unbroken awareness, as though money itself were walking beside you, sitting with you, resting in your very home. You must make of your inner world a place where money is always present, always welcome, always honored. Think of a shadow. Wherever you go, it follows. You do not beg it to stay. You do not wonder if it will disappear. You move, and it moves with you. You never doubt it, because it is inseparable from your body. This is how you must see money. It is not a stranger that comes and goes at whim. It is your shadow, your companion, your constant presence. When you rise in the morning, imagine it rising with you. When you walk into a store, imagine it walking beside you. When you lie down at night, imagine it resting under your roof. Speak to it as to a faithful friend. I am glad you are here. I am grateful you never leave me. We are together always. If you can hold this atmosphere not as strain, not as forced imagination, but as natural companionship, you will find that money, in its outer form, begins to mirror that faithfulness. Opportunities, gifts, payments, increases, they will all appear, because the inner atmosphere demands outer expression. I remember one student who had long feared money's absence. Every day she would say, "I hope it comes, I hope it stays." But her atmosphere was anxiety, her air was lack, and so money came and went like a fickle guest. I asked her to practice a different mood. Instead of hoping, I told her to walk as though money were already her closest friend. Each time she entered her home, she was to imagine greeting it. Each time she set a table, she was to picture it seated with her. Each time she lay down to rest, she was to feel it watching over her. Slowly, the fear dissolved, replaced by a quiet joy, as though she were never alone. And soon, the outer confirmed the inner. Steady income, unexpected gifts, a flow that remained. She wrote me, "It feels now as though money loves me, as though it delights to be with me." That is the atmosphere of companionship at work. So I say to you, stop treating money as a visitor to be chased or trapped. Begin to treat it as a companion that cannot be separated from you. Live in that atmosphere, breathe that air, carry that awareness. And soon you will no longer ask, "Where is it?" For you will know, as surely as you know your own shadow, that it is here, it is with you, it is faithful. And when the outer world rises to prove it with overflowing accounts, with open doors, with abundance that follows you everywhere, you will smile, for you will recognize that you had already been living with it all along in imagination. Now, let us move into the secret art that fuses imagination and dialogue into one living act, the practice of visualization as conversation. For it is not enough to speak to money and then leave the dialogue one-sided, as though you were calling into an empty room. True conversation is mutual, and when you dare to see money as a living presence, you must also allow it to answer you. This is where visualization takes its highest role, not as lifeless pictures, but as imaginal encounters, as real and as vivid as any meeting in the outer world. If you close your eyes and picture stacks of bills or coins, you may stir a faint desire, but if you close your eyes and hear money itself speaking back, reassuring you, delighting in you, calling you blessed, then you have entered the secret chamber where creation is decreed. How does one do this? Very simply. Tonight, when you retire, sit quietly, close your eyes, and imagine money standing before you as though a trusted friend. See it smile, see it move toward you, and then give it words. Let it say, I am with you. I never leave you. I multiply wherever you go. I am your faithful servant. Hear it clearly, as though it spoke in your ear. Do not rush, do not strain. Let the scene unfold gently until you feel it real. And once you have heard money's voice, let your own heart reply. Say, I honor you, I trust you, I welcome you always. This back and forth, this exchange, is more than imagination, it is communion. And what is impressed upon the subconscious in communion must be expressed in the world of form. A student once wrote to me of an experiment he tried. He was burdened with debts, pursued by creditors, fearful each time the postman approached his door. I told him to stop arguing with bills and begin conversing with money. At first he resisted, saying, how can I talk to something not there? But in desperation he tried. Each night he imagined money as a friend seated across from him. He heard it say, I am on my way. I will cover every debt. I will stay with you. And he would reply, I believe you. I thank you. Within weeks, unexpected funds arrived. Old debts were forgiven, and his heart was at peace. He wrote me saying, it was as though money itself was pleading with me to trust it, and once I did, it never failed me. So, let this be your practice. Do not limit yourself to lifeless images. Give money a face, a voice, a presence. Let it converse with you until the dialogue feels more real than the silence of your room. For imagination is not pretending, it is creating. The subconscious does not argue with your senses. It accepts what you feel and hear within as reality. If you can hear money's voice within, you will surely hear its knock upon your door without. If you can see it sit at your table in vision, you will soon count it at your table in fact. And when that day comes, you will know that you were not speaking into emptiness. You were speaking with the living spirit clothed as money, waiting all along for your recognition. Now we must deal with the great enemy that has kept countless men and women bound in chains, the silent poison that seeps into every thought and strangles the harvest before it ripens fear. For what good is it to speak words of wealth? What use is it to picture money as a friend, if deep within you trembles the dread that it will leave you? Fear is the hidden voice that contradicts every affirmation. Fear is the unspoken prayer that says, I am not enough, I will be abandoned, it cannot last. And because imagination creates reality, that fear, if indulged, manifests itself as loss, as scarcity, as sudden lack. The moment you fear that money will run away, you have already given it permission to depart. The moment you feel panic at the thought of bills, you have already assumed the state of insufficiency. So let us look this fear in the face and dissolve it with the one weapon stronger than all feeling. Think of how an animal reacts when chased. The more you run after it, the faster it flees. The more you lunge and grasp, the farther it withdraws. But sit calmly, extend your hand, and call it gently, and it will come, it will rest, it will remain. Money responds no differently. The more you chase it with fear, the more it escapes. The more you clutch it in panic, the more it slips away. But welcome it with ease, speak to it with affection, and it will draw near. The feeling of calm security is the antidote to the fear of loss. Instead of saying, what if it leaves me? You must feel, it cannot leave me. It is mine by right. It belongs to me because I am. The state of fear pushes money out. The state of confidence magnetizes it back. I remember a man who told me that whenever money came into his hands, his first thought was, How long until this is gone? His. Life bore the fruit of that inner confession. Every check, every gift, every increase seemed swallowed almost instantly by some new expense. He was living in the feeling of fear, and fear faithfully produced its harvest. I told him, change the feeling. When money comes, bless it. When money goes, bless it. Say to it, you multiply as you return. You are faithful to me. And above all, feel the peace of one who knows he cannot be deserted. He practiced this faithfully, and within months he told me that for the first time he felt safe, and the money not only stayed but grew. The fear dissolved, and with it dissolved the illusion of lack. This is the work you must do. Each time fear whispers, do not argue with it, do not analyze it, do not bow to it. Replace it at once with the feeling of security. Imagine yourself so surrounded by wealth that the idea of loss cannot even touch you. Feel the joy of always having, the peace of always being supplied, the confidence of one who knows that money delights to stay with him. Let that feeling sink deep, and the subconscious will accept it as law. And once accepted, the world must conform. Fear will vanish like smoke, and in its place will rise the solid fact of abundance that never leaves. For love casts out fear, and the feeling of companionship with money is nothing but love in action. Now I must show you the secret of endurance, the quiet persistence that turns a fleeting mood into a permanent atmosphere, for without this, even the sweetest feeling will vanish like morning dew under the rising Sunday. To feel once is good, to feel twice is better, but to persist until the feeling becomes natural, that is the key that unlocks the treasury of heaven. When I say natural, I do not mean that you strain every moment to keep the thought of money in your mind, nor do I mean that you repeat phrases endlessly as though repetition itself had power. No, natural means effortless, unconscious, as easy as breathing. It is the state you fall into without effort, the mood that surrounds you without conscious thought, the assumption that has hardened into fact within your soul. In the beginning it may feel false. You will stand before your mirror, speak to money as your companion, and a voice within will whisper, this is nonsense. Look at the bills, look at the account. Who are you fooling? And if you listen to that voice, you will abandon the practice. But if you persist, if you return night after night, day after day, gently reinstating the feeling, then little by little the false will fade and the true will grow. You will begin to notice subtle shifts. What once felt like play acting begins to feel strangely familiar. What once seemed like imagination begins to feel like memory. And the day will come when you no longer need to remind yourself, for the state has become natural. You wake in the morning already feeling wealthy. You walk through the day already secure. You retire at night already grateful. The practice has dissolved, and the identity has taken root. A merchant once wrote to me of this very process. At first, he said, every affirmation of wealth felt like a lie. He would say, I am prosperous, and laugh bitterly, for his shop was nearly empty. But he persisted. Each night, despite appearances, he felt the ease of one who sells abundantly, the joy of counting profits, the gratitude of satisfied customers. At first it was forced, then it was habit, then it was nature, and when it became nature, the outer world obeyed. His shop filled, his business thrived, his life reflected the inner state. He told me, Neville, it no longer feels like I am becoming wealthy. It feels like I have always been wealthy, and the world is simply catching up. That is persistence until natural. It is the slow, steady pressing of the seed into the soil until it sprouts, roots, and grows into a tree. Do not despise the days when it feels false. They are part of the process. Do not grow weary when the senses mock. They are but echoes of the old state. Keep returning to the feeling. Keep reinstating the mood. Keep imagining until the new self is second nature. For the law is faithful. An assumption, though false at first, if persisted in, will harden into fact. Persist in the feeling of money as your faithful companion until it is as natural as the beating of your heart, and soon the world will prove what you already know. Within that, money belongs with you, moves with you, multiplies with you, and never leaves your side. Now that you have clothed yourself in the feeling of companionship with money, let us look at how this unseen relationship makes its way into visibility. For here lies the mystery of what I call the bridge of incidence. Many wonder, if I speak to money, if I feel it with me, how does it actually arrive? How does it travel from the invisible to the visible, from the imagination to the account, from the unseen to the hand? And I tell you, life itself becomes the path. Consciousness sets the cause, and the world of facts arranges itself as the expression. There is no gap between the inner decree and the outer appearance, save the time it takes for the shadow to catch up with the light that casts it. Once you have assumed money's companionship, life must produce the chain of events that reveal it. This is the law. Think of it like a seed. When you plant it, the soil conceals it. You see nothing, yet beneath the surface, roots are pushing, life is stirring, the unseen is already at work. Then one morning, almost without warning, the sprout breaks the ground. So it is with money's path to you. At first, nothing seems to change. The bank balance looks the same. The bills still arrive. The outer picture remains as it was. But unseen, the bridge is being laid. A forgotten account is being released. A man is remembering your name. A door you did not even know existed is swinging open. And when at last the sprout breaks the dead soil, when money appears in hand, you will see that the path was being prepared all along. I recall a man who once lost his wallet with every note of cash he had for the week. Panic filled him, and at first he said, "It is gone. I will not see it again." But then he remembered the law. He quieted himself, and instead of imagining loss, he spoke to money as though it were faithful. "You are mine. You always return to me. You are loyal." He felt the peace of knowing it would come back. Within a day, the wallet was returned intact, every note in place. What had happened? The bridge of incidents had formed. Another person found the wallet, felt compelled to return it. Circumstances aligned to match the assumption. Money had proven itself faithful because he treated it as such. This is how it works. Money's path to you is not always straight, not always predictable, but it is always certain once the cause is planted. Life becomes the servant of your assumption. A chance meeting, a casual remark, a letter in the post, a new idea in the night, all are stones laid across the river to carry you to your desire. Do not ask how the bridge will form. That is not your task. Your task is to remain faithful to the inner decree. Money is with me. Money follows me. Money belongs to me. Once that is set, the world itself conspires to make it visible. And when you look back, you will marvel. For the path will seem so perfect that you will know no human mind could have planned it. Only imagination, the God within, could have woven such a bridge. So walk calmly, confidently, knowing that unseen hands are arranging all things. Do not fret if you cannot see the steps ahead. Do not doubt if the ground seems bare. The path is forming, the bridge is rising, and money is already on its way to you. Here is where many falter, though they have begun well, though they have planted the seed and felt the joy of companionship with money. For when they open their eyes, the outer world often seems unchanged. The bills still arrive in the post. The balance still looks lean. The debt collector may still knock. And in that moment they stumble, saying to themselves, "Perhaps I was foolish. Perhaps nothing is happening. Perhaps I must return to fear." And the very state they once abandoned is picked up again, and the seed is torn from the soil. This is why I must tell you, ignore the outer lack. Turn your gaze away from it. Refuse to give it the honor of your attention. For the outer world is but the echo of yesterday's belief, the shadow of last week's assumption, the corpse of an old self that no longer lives. To measure your progress by what the outer shows is to stare at the shadow and forget the light. Think of the dawn. The sun has already risen beyond the horizon, yet the valley below may still be covered in darkness. If you judged only by the valley, you would say, the night is still here. But lift your eyes, and you see the first rays breaking over the hills, proof that the night is already defeated. So it is with your assumption of wealth. The inner sun has risen, the word has been spoken, the seed has been planted. The fact that your valley still looks dark means nothing. It is already morning in the unseen, the light is on its way. Ignore the darkness, for it is passing. Attend only to the dawn within, for that is eternal. I recall a student who told me he could not persist because every time he looked at his accounts, they shouted poverty at him. I said, stop looking at them for a season. Close your eyes instead. See what you wish to see, not what the figures claim. Treat those numbers as yesterday's news. They belong to a man who is already dead. The new man you are is wealthy, and his account is already full. He obeyed. For weeks he ignored the outer evidence and attended only to the inner vision. When he finally returned to his statements, they had begun to match the news story: unexpected deposits, opportunities he could not have foreseen. He learned that ignoring lack was not denial but faith, the refusal to be hypnotized by the shadow of an old belief. So I say to you, never again bow to outer lack. Do not tremble when bills arrive. Do not groan when debt is mentioned. Do not treat these appearances as masters, for they are only servants carrying out orders you gave in the past. Cancel those orders now. Replace them with a new decree. Say within yourself, I am wealthy. Money is faithful. Money belongs to me. And let that be your only reality. Ignore every contradiction, and soon the contradictions will dissolve, leaving only the truth you have chosen. For what you persist in imagining must by law take the form of fact. The shadow must obey the light. Now we come to the part that reason can never understand, the unfolding of what I call the strange providence of life. For once you have planted the seed of wealth within, once you have spoken to money as a friend and felt it as a companion, the bridge of incidents begins to form, and yet it will rarely form in ways the intellect expects. You may think you know the direct path: this client must pay, this job must promote, this deal must close. But imagination is not bound to your limited channels. It sees from heights where all paths converge. It weaves patterns the conscious mind could never devise. And so the provision comes, but it comes by strange turns. Unexpected meetings, unplanned events, coincidences so perfect you could never call them accidents. This is providence at work, the law fulfilling itself in ways beyond your comprehension. Do you remember my own story of Barbados? In the middle of a New York winter, with no money in my pocket and no passage to the islands, I longed to spend Christmas with my family. The senses declared it impossible. Reason mocked the desire. Yet my teacher, Abdullah, told me to live in the end, to go to sleep each night in my father's house in Barbados. I obeyed. In imagination, I walked those rooms, breathed that air, felt the warmth of the sun on my skin. Outwardly, nothing changed, yet inwardly, I was already there. And then came the strange providence. A letter arrived from my brother with a ticket enclosed, permission granted where none should have been given, every obstacle removed, as though the world itself conspired to make imagination flesh. Had I planned it, I could not have arranged it so perfectly. It was not reason but providence that carried me. The same law works with money. I have known students who expected raises and instead received inheritances, who expected sales and instead received gifts, who expected one door to open and instead found another they had not even known existed. One woman, after speaking to money as though it were her constant companion, was suddenly offered a partnership in a business she had never considered. Another man, after treating money with friendship, was forgiven of debts he thought he would labor years to repay. Neither could have foreseen the paths. Both testified that it was as though life itself bent to their inner assumption. That is strange. Providence, events, moving, people acting, circumstances shifting, all without your conscious control, all to fulfill the state you dared to occupy within. So I urge you, do not demand that providence take the shape your reason dictates. Do not say, it must come this way, through this person, by this means. Simply persist in the end. Money is with me. Money is faithful. I am wealthy. Then let the bridge form as it will. Trust the unseen order. Welcome the unexpected. For the Lord does not need your plans, it only needs your faith. And when the harvest comes, you will laugh with joy, saying, I could never have arranged it so, and yet it came, perfect and complete. That laughter is the song of providence, the music of imagination made visible. Here is a revelation that will set you free from discouragement forever. The very obstacles that seem to rise against you are often the stepping stones laid down by providence to carry you across the river. You look at a denial, a delay, a rejection, and you say, this is against me. But I tell you, it is for you. It is not the end of the bridge, but part of the bridge itself. Every no that confronts you is only an invitation to see again, to imagine again, to revise the scene until it matches the desire you have claimed. You are never at the mercy of appearances. You are never trapped by facts. The law has given you dominion, and with the tool of revision, you may turn every seeming obstacle into the very path that carries you to your goal. Do you remember the words, all things work together for good to them that love God? God is your own wonderful I am, your imagination. All things, yes, even the things you call obstacles, are servants of the end you have assumed. A man once wrote to me, saying his application for a loan had been denied. He felt defeated, sure that the door was closed. I told him, do not accept the denial. Revise it. Each night, before you sleep, replay the scene. But this time, hear the clerk's voice congratulating you. See his hand extending in approval. Feel yourself signing the papers of acceptance. He obeyed. Within weeks, the same bank that had rejected him wrote again, offering terms even better than those he had sought. What had changed? Only the inner conversation. The obstacle became the bridge. The denial became the doorway. This is the secret hidden in every trial. Nothing has power until you grant it. If you see the obstacle as final, it will be final. If you see it as clay in your hands, it will mold itself to your desire. Life is fluid, not fixed. Every fact is only a shadow of belief, and belief can be revised. So when the outer world rises up to contradict your inner decree, do not collapse. Smile and say within yourself, this too is for me. This too will serve me. Then go into the silence, revise the scene, feel the wish fulfilled, and return in peace. Soon the very stone that once tripped you will become the step that lifts you higher. So I urge you, never again curse obstacles. Bless them. They are not enemies but allies in disguise. They are the raw material of the bridge that imagination builds. Each seeming setback is only an invitation to persist more deeply, to see more clearly, to claim more boldly. And when the day comes that money stands before you in abundance, you will look back and realize that every obstacle was part of the path. Every denial was a hidden yes. Every delay was a preparation for a greater fulfillment. Then you will know that nothing was ever against you, for all things are subject to the voice of imagination. Now let me lead you into the final strength, without which no bridge can be crossed, no promise can be realized, no seed can bear its harvest, the power of persistence until fulfillment. For many begin well. They plant the word, they feel the joy, they even walk a little way upon the bridge of incidents. But when the world delays, when the senses mock, when the first winds of contradiction blow, they grow weary and abandon the journey. They say, it has been too long, perhaps it does not work for me. And so they return to the old state, and the bridge they had begun to walk dissolves beneath their feet. But if they had persisted, if they had held fast even when nothing seemed to move, the end would have come, for the law cannot fail. An assumption, though false at first, if persisted in, will harden into fact. It is not the brilliance of the first moment, but the quiet faith of endurance that brings the promise into view. Think of a compass needle pointing north. The ship may rock, the storm may rage, waves may crash, winds may howl, yet the needle is steady. It never points south, never turns to east or west. It is fixed. So must your inner eye be fixed upon the end you have assumed. Let the outer world shake.